also held raffles and all sorts of activities here. The Central Hotel was one of the pivotal action spots in Beavertown. It was 3 stories tall, and it had a basement. It had a barber shop, it had a dentist's office, it had a bar, it had a dining room, and believe me, the dining room was the most important thing. After funerals and weddings and so on, a lot of people chose to dine at the Central Hotel. They had a pond with live fish and live eels in, where the people would go out and select their meal, and the cook or chef would prepare it according to their specifications. They had electrics, they had steam heat and electricity long before most other places did in town. Now, at one point, there was a Dr. Diefendorfer, a dentist from Middleburg, who had a machine in there and in McClure, and on Tuesdays he would be in Beavertown, on Thursdays he would be in McClure, the rest of the week he was in Middleburg. But he had a bicycle contraption, you pedaled it, and on the other end there was a wire went up through, and on the other end was a tooth drill. And he would sit on this thing and pedal it to get the drill going and put it in people's mouths, and when the drill got so hot that the smoke, he'd spit on it and go back in and continue drilling. This is from an eyewitness. And today that would be a little unacceptable.
Have to wear gloves today.
Yeah, oh yeah, and all sorts of other things. Couldn't spit on the tape, although maybe. The doctor's office, Dr. Conrad had his office up there, but he had a small office in here. Also, there was a barber shop. All kinds of conveniences for the travelers. And I have letters of testimony. I think I might dig 1 or 2 out. There was a lady came in, and she was so thrilled. She wrote a postcard. Oh, I'm staying in a wonderful hotel, steam heat, wonderful service, great food, $1.50 a night. Now, I talked about Doc Conrad having a darker side. He built this, and he owned it, but he had people that run it, although occasionally he'd come down as a physician to treat people. But he had some Civil War veteran roughnecks. And the reason he had them was, at one point, there was an iron mining operation here in town, and as many as 150 people stayed in the Central Hotel, mainly miners, who would have a sit-down breakfast. The girls would prepare them a takeaway lunch, and then they would come back for a sit-down meal at night, and then after that the girls had to defend themselves against a whole bunch of amorous men. And then later, when the iron business closed down, they continued to cut wood props for the mines in the anthracite district, and a whole bunch of people who were cutting props would stay in the Central Hotel, and it was the same story all over again. An eyewitness, Edna, claimed that she saw a cat run into the wall and disappear. Everyone felt the building was haunted. There is evidence that Al Camp told me, and I promised I'd never reveal the name. I may write it in a will or something. There was a Civil War veteran, one of these roughnecks, who found out there was a Jewish peddler who would come in, rented a buggy, peddled all his stuff, and now had nothing but cash money. They got him drinking a little bit. They started talking, and they find out no one knows where he's at. He has no relatives. He has no one to account to. He's strictly on his own. And so this is alleged now. He was killed and buried in the cellar by this roughneck Civil War veteran who kept the money. And I can't verify it, but on the other hand, it's possible. It's also alleged that there's a well in town where so many people were buried, not in town, but in Beaver Township toward the west, where a well was so filled with, and alleged, and Mr. Shear, our high school principal, told me there were 14 unsolved murders in Snyder County, and most of them here in Beavertown. That's all, but they were buried in this well, and lime was put on top of them to the point where it was topped off and closed. Again, I don't know, but that's the history of that particular building. The good part is that it's good food, it's wholesome, but this one episode kind of made it a bad one, and thereafter, at least, people thought it was haunted. Now we'll move on. Right here was a Pennsylvania Railroad station, passenger station. Right back here was a Pennsylvania freight station. And all along the street out to about that first tree were tanks where they brought in different kinds of fuel. Kerosene and different grades of gasoline, other liquid. A whole series of them. This was in September the 14th, 1871. On Friday last, a train of cars penetrated the center of Beavertown and occasioned great rejoicing among the villagers. The telling of the large bell upon the church was a signal for all small bells in the town and immediate vicinity to join in the chorus, being the arrival of the first train. The cornet band proceeded to the train and discoursed Hail Columbia in a good style. Men, women, and children hailed its advent as the dawning of a new era. The extensive tannery elected by Mr. Samuel Luffy is a credit to our town. Messrs. Conrad and Shirk have erected two very fine buildings, the former a hotel, the latter a storeroom and private dwelling. Other improvements are in progress. Hail Beaver. Now the Shirk building that he built was a stovepipe and stove store for a present barber shop. And of course, Dr. Conrad is the one who built the Central Hotel. Now, at first it was just a small passenger station all by itself, and then they later enlarged it and added the big freight station and the other things. There was a double track right in here, and right there, when this train came through, was the Keystone Match Factory. The Keystone Match Factory, that was the office. At one point it had more doors and windows than any other building in town. It still may. I'm not sure. But that was the office. The other building, the regular factory, was a wooden building that extended all the way out to about 3/4 of the way of that lot out there. And I'm just going to read a few anecdotes about it. On January 22nd, 1885, William Youngman, William Keller, and Samuel White decided to start a match station in Beavertown called the Keystone Match Factory, and so they did. By October the 22nd, 1885, it was in full operation, turning out 20 gross, or 576,000 handmade barn burner matches a day. On January 21st, 1886, they shipped 29 cases of matches, all made in that one day, which amounted to 835,200 matches. On Monday, June the 21st, 1886, a fire broke out in the plant, and before it could be put out, a large number of matches made ready for shipment had to be destroyed. By Memorial Day, 1887, this was the leading industry in all of Snyder County. At this point, they made 6,412 boxes, or 1,282,400 handmade matches each day, and employed 27 people. On March the 29th, 1888, they suspended operation, moved their machines, tore down their machines and moved them, made ready, and shipped them to Sealands Grove. Thus ended Beavertown's second largest employer. The Isabella Steam Tannery was the largest. And thereafter, the building where the factory was torn down, and this is sold as a private dwelling to Mr. Les Spade. I just want to briefly mention that that was the Adams Express office by Moses Spade. And we had a silo that would accept trains and load trains and ship it out on the railroad. And the Isabella Steam Tannery was right beyond his garage there, and extended all the way down to Continental Park. Very large.